How do you poop on the moon? Tonight you will probably use a toilet. You sit down, you do what you have to do, you flush, and the problem disappears. Very advanced technology. In July 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were about 240,000 miles from Earth. They had a spacecraft capable of landing on another world, a guidance computer, radar, rocket engines, life support, spacesuits. They had spent billions of dollars figuring out how to get humans to the moon. But inside the Lunar Module, there was no toilet. Not a bad toilet, not a tiny toilet, no toilet. NASA's own description of the Apollo Lunar Module says it had no installed toilet, and not even a designated bathroom area. So, how do you poop on the moon? The answer was, a bag. This was called the Fecal Collection Assembly, which sounds considerably more impressive than bag. It was basically a specially designed plastic bag with adhesive around the opening. The astronaut exposed the adhesive and attached the bag directly to his butt. Because there was another problem: gravity. Or more accurately, not enough of it. On Earth, when you go to the bathroom, gravity quietly does a lot of the work. You have probably never thanked gravity for this. You should. Inside a spacecraft in zero gravity, poop does not politely fall downward. There is no downward. So the Apollo collection bag even included a small finger sleeve that helped the astronaut manage the waste manually. NASA had figured out how to navigate 250,000 miles through space. Your finger was still part of the bathroom system. Progress is complicated. Afterward, the astronaut cleaned himself, added germicide, sealed the waste inside, and worked the germicide through the contents before the bag was stored. Apollo fecal bags were designed with adhesive, cleaning supplies, and germicidal treatment, because keeping bacteria contained inside a tiny spacecraft was rather important. And this was not quick. NASA's later review of Apollo medical debriefings says going through the entire process could take about 45 minutes.
Wow.
45 minutes to poop. That is longer than the lunar module took to descend through some of the most dramatic portions of its landing sequence. And the astronauts were not enthusiastic customers. NASA's own technical summary records complaints that the bags did not always stick properly, which could result in what NASA politely calls escapees. Their description of the result is less polite: a complete mess. Space exploration. This problem had already produced one of the stranger moments in the entire Apollo program. During Apollo 10, the mission that rehearsed the moon landing, fecal material escaped inside the spacecraft more than once. The crew had to retrieve it while floating in zero gravity. NASA records confirm that the Apollo 10 astronauts discussed these escaped objects in their onboard communications. Think about the situation. 3 men are traveling around the moon. They are testing one of the most sophisticated machines humanity has ever built. Outside the window, another world. Inside the spacecraft, something else is also orbiting. And nobody wants to claim it. Apollo 11 didn't magically solve the problem. In the technical debrief after humanity's first moon landing, Buzz Aldrin described trying to have a bowel movement before lunar module operations. He said he spent between 1 and 2 hours trying, with very little success. He later described the bag system as messy and unpleasant, and Michael Collins said NASA needed a better way of handling fecal waste. This gives you a slightly different image of the heroic astronaut. We usually picture Buzz Aldrin like this, standing on the moon, American flag behind him, visor reflecting another human being on another world. Very majestic. A few hours earlier, come on. So why didn't NASA just install a toilet? Because going to the moon is basically a war against weight. Every kilogram has to be launched from Earth, which requires fuel, which itself weighs something, which requires more fuel. So engineers fought constantly to make Apollo lighter. The lunar module was especially extreme. Anything it did not absolutely need didn't come. Seats? Not really. Armstrong and Aldrin stood during landing. Large windows? Too heavy. Bathroom? Bag. The spacecraft wasn't designed to be comfortable. It was designed to land on the moon and leave again. Everything else was negotiable. And that leads to the final part of the story. What happened to the poop? Some Apollo solid waste traveled back to Earth in treated collection bags. Apollo spacecraft had no true toilets. Crews relied on bags and other collection devices. But inside the Lunar Module, NASA had another solution. Leave it. Before the astronauts launched from the lunar surface, unnecessary material was removed from the ascent stage to save weight. NASA's technical history of the Lunar Module says the crew's body waste was left behind on the moon before ascent. Think about that. Humans traveled to another world. We brought cameras, scientific experiments, a flag, messages from Earth. We collected rocks that had been untouched for billions of years. And when it was time to leave, we took the rocks and left the poop. Today, spacecraft toilets are much more sophisticated. NASA's Orion spacecraft uses airflow to pull waste away from the body and into separate storage systems. Apollo astronauts would probably have considered this magnificent. But Apollo is a useful reminder of what technological progress actually looks like. It isn't. Humanity invents everything perfectly, then goes to the moon. It's humanity solves one impossible problem, discovers 17 ridiculous new problems, solves those too, and keeps going. We figured out how to escape Earth's gravity, navigate through space, land on another world, walk around, and come home alive. But there was one problem even the moon couldn't make disappear. Humans are still humans. Eventually, somebody has to poop.